Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today.
G'day, Pete.
Gerard, good morning, brother. How you doing?
Thanks, mate. Yourself?
I'm fantastic, my friend. Sorry about that. I had a little technical issue. I've had to switch back to just a different audio platform, but we should be rocking and rolling. We're all good now.
No stress. Awesome.
How's your world turning today, my friend? I know I kind of got confused before because you're heading into summer now. Everything's warming up over there. I speak to people internationally all the time, and it always seems to slip my mind that we're so worlds apart.
Yeah. No, it's so we're coming into summer. Australia this summer has been flooding pretty epically. We go through some weather patterns dictated by the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean, and they usually bring rain. And this year, both of them are bringing a heap of rain. So we've had a lot of flooding, especially in the state that I work in. And we've been sending a heap of people to help with those floods up to the impacted communities, which has been great for my organisation to be able to get out there and help the community, but horrible for the people who are suffering from the floods.
It's interesting to see the different sort of variations that we see in like climate and environment and stuff like that, and how we're having to sort of equip trucks for different kind of. I mean, what's flooding been like over there? Because people think of Australia and stuff like that, and I so commonly associate it with wildfires and stuff like that. But I suppose you still experience the length and breadth of different sort of climate changes over there.
Yeah, we do. If it's not peak fire season, it's peak flood season. So you've got to be careful what you wish for here.
Get the best of both worlds.
It's either fires or floods. It's quite a dramatic climate that we have here. I don't know if you remember back in 2019, 2020, we had some of the worst bushfires I think this country's ever had, where it affected 3 states. I'm down South Australia, like in the southern part of the eastern side of Australia, in a state called Victoria, and we're horribly prone to bushfires. But that year, places in Queensland in the tropics were burning, which is so unlike Queensland.
So when it comes to things like that, I mean, do you guys have crossover of skill sets, or do you kind of do a mentoring thing for them? How does it form a bigger part of your base level of training, the fact that you cover so much around wildfires? Because we were speaking to, who did I have on recently? We haven't put his episode out yet, but he was actually a Brit and went over and worked in Australia and joined there. And they were saying how they sort of switch out the equipment on the trucks depending on what time of year it is. And he was part of it when they started bringing in all the leaf blowers and stuff like that. And he worked in some sugarcane farms when he was younger over there as well. And you do a lot of controlled burns of like large crop on like a regular basis. He said they would do it either every month or every week, and it wasn't seen to be a scary or daunting thing if there was a whole field of crop on fire somewhere, because it might just be sort of a natural part of their farming.
Yeah, for sure. Depends on what state you're in. So up in the northern states, to harvest sugarcane, you've got to burn it. We get a lot of stubble burns in our cropping areas where the farmers will burn all the stubble at the end of cropping to help put nutrients back into the ground. As far as our response goes, the organisation I work for is very interesting because it's very new. We only formed on the 1st of July 2020. And basically, we brought together a Shire Brigade and a Metropolitan Brigade. And we made one statewide career fire service. Before that, both had a wildfire response.
It's a massive pleasure to welcome our new partner to the podcast, Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, I've personally worn Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades, working operationally in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services throughout their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceed global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. It's a really exciting and humbling moment to be welcoming Gore-Tex to the family. And the best way for you to support the podcast is to go over and find out a little bit more about all of the partners that help bring this podcast to you. So expect a lot of things coming from us in the future as we work together as a partnership to help inform, educate, and protect professionals in the fire and emergency services. Gore-Tex, going further together. Now back to the show.
So in Australia, fire services is state based. So a state runs. So we have three levels of government. We have local government or shires and councils. We have state government, and then we have federal government. Fire and police services are run by the states, and ambulance services are run by the states. So we had two different career fire services in my state, and we were the only state that ran two career fire services in a state. So I guess for consolidation and harmonization, because we were working with each other all the time, but we had different equipment, different practices, different trucks. To harmonize all that, they decided to form one career fire agency. And that works closely with the volunteer fire agency over here in Australia that we support them, they support us. They do a lot of the smaller communities and most of the rural properties and rural firefighting and wildfire firefighting.
That seems like way too much common sense, though. That doesn't seem like the sort of thing, with the greatest of respect, that we would see sometimes. Like I speak to, I've got a guy who's been on the podcast a couple of times. But we haven't released any of his episodes. Actually, Steve Sadler, really fascinating guy, really knowledgeable. And we were speaking about the differences, even just locally, between like the England, and like Ireland. So something like, in the UK, I think we have 47 or so fire brigades, so someone will probably correct me on that. But even in Ireland, they had something like 20 something. And each one, especially in the UK, and I think this when I speak to manufacturers, each can be guilty at times of having a little bit of empire building. People like to be chief of an organization, even if they've only got like 300 or 400 people in that organization. And so often we do have issues with like, correlating qualifications or operating procedures. And we try to do things like national operational guidance. You may have obviously seen a little bit of this in the UK when you came over. And widely, from a guidance perspective, that works well. But you still do see a lot of isms, a lot of entrenched beliefs about the way it's always been done or the way it should be done. So when you say something like that, I mean, it fills me with optimism, because I'd love to see a little bit more of that common sense. And I also think with so many economical challenges, it does make sense for us to get out of that siloed thinking, share resources, share ideas. There's obviously a lot of cost savings there, but there would be a lot of pushback, I believe, just anecdotally from this thing I've seen in the UK. You say it like it was an easy thing, but like, do you know what I mean? It's common sense, but it's not always commonplace. So how would that transition work?
Like, it hasn't been easy. I mean, you're merging two cultures and two very proud cultures together. And you lost history of two organisations.
Yeah.
One of them was around for 125 years, the Metropolitan Fire Brigade of Melbourne. And so it was a very proud organisation, and it's no longer in existence. It doesn't exist anymore.
That must have been super difficult for
and
people. Like, someone feels like they're going to lose their badge or they're going to lose that whatever. I mean, when we spoke before, you gave an analogy of like joining London Fire Brigade with a shire, and that would just be just a colossal shit show of a culture clash in certain aspects. I mean, ultimately, firefighters across the world share a lot of similarities, but like you said, there is a lot of visceral pride and whatnot that comes along, and rightly so. We want people to be proud of the organisations they work for.
Same circus, different clowns, right? I've travelled around Australia, I've travelled around internationally. I've seen a lot of fire services. We're all the same, essentially, but we're all really attached to the fire service that we work for, and we're very proud to come from that brigade. But for us, like, hats off to the old hands. Like, I had one old hand I was working with during the transition. He'd done 45 years.
Wow.
45 years for the organisation. So a third of its lifespan, he had worked for that organisation. He was the last person at number one station that worked in the old number one station in Melbourne. That was like turned into a museum. It's a historical building now.
Yeah.
So he'd seen a lot of change and a lot of transition, and he embraced that change. He was like, look, I'm sad. I've dedicated 45 years to the MFB, but I can see what this means for the future of the brigade and the future of people coming into the brigade. And when you want to talk about traditions and culture and, like, I don't know, that guardianship of the job, you come in, you are a number, you are going to leave one day, but you always want to leave it in a better place than you found it for the people coming on. That to me showed that was the peak example of leaving it better than you found it, because you're not going to put yourself first, you're going to put the brigade first and the people coming on first. And I was just blown away by that. And a lot of people did embrace it. I mean, there were some that retired because of it, because they didn't want to change.
Okay.
But the majority of people embraced it, and it's had growing pains. Don't get me wrong. Like you've said it yourself, mixing a metropolitan brigade and a shire brigade is always going to be hard.
Mm.
But we've seen a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth, right? Because you've got operating systems opening up to the shire brigade that they never had. You've got opportunity opening up to the metropolitan brigades that they never had. People can work, in regional communities or in the city now. They can start to choose those type of paths for themselves.
Mm.
And logistically, we went from two organisations of about 2,000 each to an organisation of 4,000
Mm.
personnel. So you've got all this resourcing and stuff ready to go for anyone, accessible.
Mm.
Which is
It also economically gives you
that's the big.
a bit more of a power, perhaps. Power is probably not has negative connotations to it, but it's like you have more buying power with things that you invest in. You can have more elaborate training exercises, training departments, more investment in people. People can also see more opportunity to widen their career and travel all over the place, which can add to a richness of experience as well. So there are masses of benefits to it. And I do believe that's probably where we're eventually going to head in the UK. But that aspects of sort of acceptance of change or, embracing change can be very, very, very difficult for some people stuck in certain mindsets.
100%, but you just got to bring them along for the journey. Like you've got to
Mm.
highlight to them. Yes, first of all, you got to acknowledge their loss.
Mm.
That's the big thing. Acknowledge the loss. Go, yeah, cool. Like we're not doing things like we did yesterday anymore, and that's hard and it sucks.
Mm.
But then you highlight the positives that are coming out of this. You highlight the opportunity, you highlight the growth, you highlight the development. I mean, we've got a training college and we're well over capacity. I'm currently stationed there teaching in the structural department, and we're probably at 125% capacity for the facility.
Wow.
But what that leads to is capital funding to go, cool, we're going to build new training grounds.
Mm.
And what are they going to look like? Like our training ground right now is pretty awesome. It probably needs a little bit more live fire because we've got a lot of gas simulation and not much live fire.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing some issue there. Oh, not issue. That's probably the wrong word to say. We're seeing a disjointedness in understanding of fire behaviour from our recruit firefighters
Mm-hmm.
because they're not getting that experience of that heat and smoke as much as they would if we had a better live burn facility. But for our on-shift firefighters, to have a safe place to train that has lower carcinogens, lower contamination problems, all that kind of stuff, it's just brilliant because they can contextualize the environment because they've been in it. So they come out there, they do the gas props, they get to practice reps and sets.
Do you believe that is a big
which has been
driver
really cool.
behind the sort of timidity or reluctance to do a lot of live burns? Because this is very similar in a lot of places in the UK where a lot of training services lean away from doing live burns. But you recently, I know it's something we're going to come on to later on in our conversation, but you recently came over and spent some time at the Fire Service College in the UK, and they still do. I was going to say almost predominantly, but almost exclusively, I think they only do live burns. I don't think they have
Exclusively. It was
Yeah.
exclusively. I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is like, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
rare,
So
though. I mean, there's something about that environment and about where they're located. They're almost a law unto themselves. They're not surrounded by too much residential, which I think is some of the challenges with a lot of the other services where their training departments have just been surrounded by residential environments. But the Fire Service College still seem to be getting away with it. I don't want to say getting away with it like they're doing something wrong, but yeah, it's great that they still have that tradition of doing it that way.
I think training methodologies is a huge thing that we're going to have to look at moving forward for the fire services. So you're my age, I think, in your mid-30s.
Yeah.
You've been in around 16 years, yeah?
Yep.
So in that time, you would have noticed a drop-off in shouts, yeah?
Yep. 100%.
Like going jobs, 100%. So our guys and girls are coming out now, and our guys and girls are probably getting exposed to less structure fires than you and me did when we first came out. And therefore, they're starting to lack a bit more of that experience. And if you look at a firefighter and you picture a triangle, right? Because we're the fire service, we've always got to talk in triangles.
Love it.
And the three elements of that firefighter's skill and ability would be their skill set. So how good are they at doing tasks? Their knowledge, how much do they know about fires and the theory behind what they're doing and the machinery that they're using, and experience. And that triangle forms a surface area, and that surface area then becomes the firefighter, right? So now that we're reducing people's experience, well, we're not reducing people's experience. We're not going to as many fires, so people have reduced experience. So how do we keep that triangle at the same surface area. We have to extend their skills and their knowledge. And the only way we can do that's through training. Now, we want them to train safely and we want them to train in a safe environment. I mean, you've probably lost mates to cancer. I've lost mates to cancer in my short career. And it's devastating. And like, it's the thing that's the number one thing that keeps me up at night now is firefighter cancer, because we're really big on it.
Okay.
But at the same time, we want to be competent and effective. And like, you've talked to John McDonough, and John always talks about being competent and effective over risk adverse. So for that, we probably need to have a mixture of modalities when we're delivering training. So a mixture of gas prop simulation and a mixture of live fire. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both together to be able to deliver a better experience for our trainees. I mean, when you talk about carbonaceous fires, you can talk about fuel loads, and they're not realistic.
No.
They're in non-combustible buildings. They're just 3 sheets of plywood, but they at least give you some realistic smoke movement. They give you some realistic heat, appreciable heat, and you can start to see what water does. And they're going to give you some negative feedback if you do the wrong thing. So they give you some more experience than the gas props do. But the gas props are great to do sets and reps once you have a context to base it on.
No, absolutely. So, like you were saying, you were in your mid-30s now, but take us back to, because I feel like we've jumped forward there in a wonderful way. But like, you joined when you were 24, didn't you? So you were
23. 23, 24.
This is back in 2012, and it was County Fire Authority when you first joined. What actually made you want to get into the job? Because you've obviously enjoyed sticking with it.
Oh, mate, I've always wanted to do this. Like, this is all I can remember. I grew up behind a fire station in a small town that I grew up in. And we had the townies, or the retained station, across the road. And we had the Bush Fire Brigade, which is the volunteers, and they were both across the road from my house. So I grew up just looking at fire trucks and watching them turn out and standing out the front with my little fire helmet, hoping that they'd take me when they got shouts.
Love it.
Unfortunately, they didn't. Mum had to calm me down and tell me, they don't need your experience. Anyway, I kept going through school. And when I was a teenager, I read a book, Report from Engine Company 82 by Dennis Smith.
Okay.
And it was about New York City Fire Department in the war years in the Bronx. And it was just a year in Engine Company 82. And they were doing like 9,000 fires a year or something like that. It was just ridiculous, like 3-4 fires a day and a heap of other calls. And I read that book, and that book does romanticize the job, but it also gives it a human perspective, and it really talks about what the job's about, which is helping people. Yeah, like at the end of the day, we're here to help whoever calls us because they've got an emergency. They deem it an emergency. They need us to come there and sort it out for them. And I was like, cool, that's what I want to do. That's who I am. That's what I want to be. So I continued down that path. I went and did some work experience with New South Wales Fire Brigades, which is John McDonough's brigade.
Oh, really?
That's the state I grew up in.
Wow.
And I loved it. I thought it was the best, frothed it. But they said to me, in Australia, you need your truck license. We kind of don't take people straight out of school. You probably should go get a trade or some education or a bit of life experience. So I took that on board, left school, started a chefing apprenticeship, didn't really enjoy that, so became a butcher. And then as I was doing butchery, life just got away on me. And, I met a girl, she was going to university. So I was like, yeah, cool, I'll go to university. I've got the marks to go. So I went and studied psychology. And I was in my second year of studying psychology, and I was hating it.
Oh, really?
I was just like, I can't do this for a living yet. I'm just like, I can't do this for a living. I'm a very logical person and I love science, but psychology is still in that pseudoscience phase where like I can develop an intelligence test and say, this is the best intelligence test in the world. And then you can come along and go, well, what's your metric? What is intelligence to you? And I say, oh, it's, how well I can climb a tree. And you go, well, that's not the only metric of intelligence, so your test is flawed. And I'm like, yeah, cool. When you sort your stuff out, call me and I'll come back. But so I was studying that and I hated it. And I'm stuck at the traffic lights and I'm sitting there and the pumper pulls up next to me. And I was like, oh, that's right. I wanted to chase that. So I went straight home, started applications for Victoria and New South Wales. New South Wales weren't hiring at the time. but Victoria were. So I started with the Metropolitan Fire Brigade. And at that time, the Metropolitan Fire Brigade's process was long. Like, it was years to get
Really?
through each stage to get hired. Yeah. Like, you talk to the guys, and even if you didn't fail a stage, it was still 2 years from time of application to probably start a recruit course.
Fucking hell.
So while I was waiting for
Why is
this,
that so? Why is
I
that so long? Sorry. Why is it such a long process?
they they didn't at the time they didn't need people. So that they always wanted consistent recruitment, but they were only recruiting like 25 a year.
Okay.
So they'd do the merit list, and they'd have the merit list, the order of merit, and they'd pull people off that. And then that list would get low, so they'd start moving the process along again. So they would only progress it when they needed to. They just didn't go, yeah, cool, we're going to start this pool and go bang and have 7,000. We're going to keep the list populated. When the list isn't populated, we'll populate the list again.
I think there is a
So
benefit to
while I was
doing that,
waiting for
though,
that to happen,
because I think we've started moving a little bit towards that kind of thing in the UK. And you see it like the military and the police seem to always be recruiting and always be recruiting. And I think it does show good indications of people that have that sort of resiliency and tenacity to continue to pursue something, even if it takes a couple of years to do it. Because that's almost like sometimes an intangible metric that it's hard to quantify if you're just doing a single recruitment. And then for people that don't make it, you just wipe them off the list. You don't track any of their history. You don't hold that on record, or you don't hold them on almost an approved list or a waiting recruitment list. But I think to myself, you should treat it like you would treat a business. You would always have an email list. You would always have a list of an engaged community that are interested in what you're doing from a company's perspective. So I think that, and perhaps it's just the evolution of the technological age, that we should be, and I think we are slowly moving more towards that model. But I still speak to a number of services and brigades that don't even have like an email list of people that are generally interested. They just spontaneously do recruitment every couple of years. So I do think that, and I assume that's a model that they still adopt over there, that's definitely a way to have that constant thread, that constant fill in the pipeline of people that are genuinely interested in something like this, even if they have to have a bit of patience around it. Because I do think, like in the instant gratification society that we're starting to live in now, that demonstration of patience is a really valuable characteristic that can be hard to measure for.
We've moved away from that method now because we've undergone we've undergone massive expansion, and we've been putting on 240 recruits a year.
Whoa.
Like 240 whole-time recruits a year, which has just been massive for us. Like everywhere, we went through a bit of a hiring ban in the 90s, and then we've undergone expansion. So when I joined in 2012, my station had, so the Country Fire Authority was a mixed brigade. It had volunteers and career firefighters. And I worked at a station with 6 firefighters and 7 trucks. So we were jumping everywhere. You'd turn out 2 up. You'd turn out you and the SO, and you could take a mixture of trucks. But if 2 trucks were out at a fire or at a shout, an alarm call, whatever, and the fire came in, it was you and the boss. Wow. So you'd pull up, and the boss would go do their size up, and you grab the hose out, and the boss would come back and start putting some water in from the outside. You'd go grab a feed line, do a changeover, put your BA on, grab the hose line, try and get in there a little bit.
Just the 2 of you?
I mean, it made great firefighters, but just the 2 of them. And hopefully the volunteers would rock up by this stage, because the volunteers obviously have to drop what they're doing, get to the station, get dressed, get in a truck and come down. But if it was a weekday or something and the other truck was out, maybe you'd be on your own for 10, 15 minutes by just the 2 of you. Wow. Fire.
See, that's kind of what we're accidentally moving a little bit towards now, because we're doing a lot of tactical response vehicles and smaller, more lightweight, theoretically more agile and effective vehicles. But we've always historically turned out with a minimum of 4, and it used to be sort of 5 when I first joined. So now that concept of moral pressure that comes with turning out with just you and a junior officer can be really daunting to people, because they feel like they could become subject to exactly what you've just said. But it's astonishing to hear that you've been doing it all that time, whereby, you turn up, it's just you and the boss, you're going to have to do the majority of the work potentially. And like, if it does come to, would you ever commit to structural firefighting with just the 2 of you there?
Puts the crews in a precarious moral decision-making area. So
Yeah.
like sometimes yes, sometimes you have to. Sometimes like people have to do that. You'd never plan for it. You never want it. You'd always try and wait as long as you could. But you never know what you're turning up to. And it was awesome because you had to be good. You
Mm.
had to be efficient. You had to be proficient at your skill set, right? But it's no way to run a fire service.
Okay.
And it's no way to meet community expectations. It
Mm.
is horrible. Like we're now four in a primary across the job, and it's brilliant. And we're minimum 7 on the fire ground.
Wow. Okay.
So if we get a call, we're trying to put 7 career firefighters on that fire ground so that we have the staffing to complete the basic tasks. So you've got your BA board, you've got 2 crews, you've got a pump operator, you've got an officer.
Mm.
Everything can be done. I don't advocate for minimum staffing at all, and I hate to hear I've heard a bit about what's going on in the UK Fire Service, and I hate to hear that's coming or that they're trying to push that methodology because I think it just puts people in the worst positions.
It does, and I mean, if managed correctly, I can see the benefits for it because when people are saying, "Look, if we're just sending you to, an AFA, an automatic fire alarm, or if you're just going to go and help gain entry for another service, say you're going to help a paramedic gain entry or something like that," I can see the effectiveness of small jobs like that, or you've got a small fire in the open, then yeah, you can deal with that. Just the two of you, a hose or whatever it might be, one tank of water and truck, you'll be fine. But ultimately, you don't really know what it is until you get there. And that's the point sometimes then when it's too late and people go, yeah, well, you just call for the makeup. But there have been those situations, and we're gonna be covering some of them hopefully on the podcast soon, about where people have turned up, just the two of them, and there are persons reported in a structural fire, and it becomes that, as we've alluded to already, that moral dilemma of the public are there, you want to send somebody in, you don't want to send anybody in alone, but the two of you are going to go in there. There's nobody outside. There's nobody managing the truck. There's nobody watching the water. There's nobody that knows you're in there. But are you still going to do it? Most probably, myself included, I would fucking do it. I'd get dragged off the coals when I got back, and I'd probably have to answer for my actions. But that worries me a little bit, and I feel like some firefighters feel like they're being set up to fail a little bit potentially.
Oh, 100%, yeah. Like you don't want to put people in these positions where they have to make a decision like that, where it's like, okay, community. We've been having this discussion on my shift for a little while at the college in our structural firefighting department about what does the community expect us to do by versus what's our operational reality. Like what can we achieve with one pump and all that kind of stuff. And the argument always comes back to we need more people. Like we run 4, right? So we turn up to a house fire and helps 3-4 minutes away, usually coming into your area. But for those 3 or 4 minutes, you're on your own. So you're establishing a line, you're putting your wear on, but your pump operator is now trying to get water out, water in, and run the BA board. Right. So our accountability system straight there is really hard to start. Like we're on the back foot, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
By how much time have they had, how all that kind of stuff. And I just think, I think trying to lessen staffing, even though bean counters probably look at us and go, cool, well, I've got 4 people going to a small fire in a backyard that could be put out with 2 people and a light vehicle. But what if it isn't just that small fire in the backyard? What if it's a shed? What if it's a building? What if it's something else?
What if it's spread to the property? Yeah.
Exactly. We're our own worst enemy. Because if we're doing our job, we don't have any fires of consequence. Right? Like we don't have any big fires because we get there, we put them out, we smash them because we're well resourced and well staffed and all that kind of stuff. The guys and girls smash it every time. So the bean counters look at it and go, cool, we've got all these people on the payroll, but we don't really have bad fires. Yeah. So what do? Oh, okay, we'll cut staffing. And then what happens? Fires of consequence go up.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? Yeah. But not only that, I mean, there's so many other factors involved there. For example, like where we are from a socioeconomic perspective, certainly in the UK, and I imagine a lot of places across the world post-COVID, is that a lot of companies are struggling. A lot of people are struggling with the cost of living and stuff like that. And inherently, what tends to happen when people have to start cutting corners is that their living state starts to lessen a little bit. They make silly mistakes. They try and save money in certain places, and it can at times walk hand in hand with just more human error and more silly mistakes and people living in a state that is not sustainable for them, and that concerns me because I think we will see more accidents in the home. I think we will see people being less cared for. We'll see, businesses and whatnot trying to cut costs and be more efficient with things. And I do anticipate that we'll see an increase in just the amount our communities need us over the coming years. And when I try and correlate that with the fact that we're losing a lot of experience and we're losing a lot of staff across the UK Fire and Rescue Service, we are recruiting heavily, but as we've alluded to already, we're having a lot of people come in with not a lot of experience. Not a lot of experience, exactly. That worries me, because you're seeing, junior officers, crew managers, watch commanders, things like that, who perhaps have never been in a structural fire themselves. Doesn't make them bad at their job. It just means that they've got a narrower bandwidth of experience to draw from when in those very challenging decision-making moments.
Hey folks, just wanted to jump in with a quick piece around firefighter health and wellbeing. Whether you are trying to join the fire service and pass them tricky fitness tests, if you are currently serving, or if you are coming up to that next chapter of your life, retiring from the emergency services, we get so many different questions around it. So in partnership with Fitness for the Frontline, we have come up with a series of guidance and programs specifically designed to reflect the physical elements of the role of a firefighter. So whether it's carrying an LPP across an overgrown field, lifting a ladder above your head under running it, or wrestling with cutting gear for 30 plus minutes at some kind of complicated RTC, our bodies are required to lift, push, and carry objects in very specific circumstances. That is effectively what Fitness on the Frontline focuses on, as well as the longer term aspects of overall health and wellness for our firefighters. Now, we are definitely not about to be smashing out world records or getting that beach body ready in 6 weeks rubbish. The systems and programs that we put in place are adjusted for people's current fitness levels, and they're not a prescriptive weight or a one-size-fits-all BS. It is very likely for myself personally that I'm still going to be a firefighter when I'm 60 plus, so longevity in the role is really important to me, and I know it is for so many people out there. It all starts with no obligation, 7 days worth of the programming, absolutely free. So whether you're joining, serving, or looking at the next chapter in your life, Fitness for the Frontline is designed by firefighters for firefighters. Now back to the show.
They don't have the, I've seen this before. Hang on, where have I seen something like this? Filing cabinet. Oh, there it is. Yeah, cool. From what I'm hearing and what I saw when I was over there, the cost of living pressure and energy prices. I'd be worried about CO. See, people are going to buy outdoor heaters with little gas bottles, and they're going to light them up in their small, poor ventilated buildings, and they're going to poison themselves with CO poisoning.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to be going to that. And they don't present any different. You can't smell it. You can't see it.
I also think, now you've just said that, actually, it's also kind of come to my mind that we're probably seeing this winter as well, and I'm sure the information's already out there, but people will start utilising their home fires a lot more again. Fires that they've probably not used for freaking 5 or 6 years because they've just relied on their central heating systems for so long. And I imagine we'll probably see some sort of a spike in chimney fires as well, because people probably haven't had them swept in years. They're just an ornamental thing that they have in their living rooms. And then they're going to start throwing in, and trying to utilize them over what is looking like it's going to turn into quite a cold winter over here. So, yeah, I know we went down a little bit of a rabbit hole there, but I anticipate that'll probably be something that we see climbing into. Now, I was just looking at some of the stuff.
Here's a question.
Go on, sorry. Yeah, go on.
Just before you go on, just a quick question, because we don't get many chimney fires, but we do get some. What's the MO with the chimney fire over there? How do you guys operate? Is it water, or are you using dry chem extinguishers? What are you doing?
So there's a couple of different methods from when I first joined. When I first joined, I was working for a rural fire service, so we experienced a lot of agricultural fires, and we also experienced a lot of chimney fires. And back then, there was two methods. So we would have sets of chimney rods, which were, God, testing me now, they were like, I remember because I used to read the data sheet, it says Malacca cane, brass connection, and they were about 1 meter in length each, and you would insert them one at a time. So you'd stand outside the building, if it was obviously a single story, 2-story building, 3 meters per floor, whatever it is, and you'd say roughly it's going to be 9 rods or 6 rods or whatever it be to get through the chimney. And you'd have what we call a rosebud connection, would be on the end of the chimney rods, and you connect that up to a stirrup pump that you just put in a bucket. So there's just one method. You go in the person's lounge, try and throw a load of salvage sheets and stuff down, try not to make a fucking mess. You'd start taking the hearth apart, and you start taking, and even some of these words will mean fuck all to people because nobody uses words like hearth and everything like that anymore. So he's trying to explain this to 17-year-olds coming into the job. They're like, what the fuck is that? And so anyway, we're like, and we would rod the chimney. So some of the old chimneys would have an access hatch out the back of them and you could rod them externally. But one thing I did see, and this is a fucking story for you. One thing I did see, and we used to climb up on the roofs and attack them from the pot. So we'd take the pot off the roof, and if it was able to do so, sometimes they would direct a hose reel just straight down the fucking chimney. Now, this was a bit of a fucking stupid idea from the get-go, I always thought, because it was always a little bit of a, similar to CFBT maybe, it's a bit of a spray and see what the reaction is. If you've got steam coming out, then obviously it's hitting a hot spot and there's no water coming into the lounge, then keep applying water. But I remember going to a job once, and it was there was a central chimney stack connected between two bungalow properties, which are single-story properties in the UK that don't have stairs or anything. And we went up the outside of the building, or one of the firefighters went onto the roof. I was stood out the front assisting the JO. The guy inside, and we're all prepped, start putting some down. And he puts a little bit down from the outside. And he goes, no, nothing's coming through. Keep going. So he's putting a bit more down. No, nothing's coming through. And he keeps putting, and the fucking neighbor comes running out of the fucking house. And we've been pissing water down the fucking neighbor's chimney. And it's just stupid shit like that where you're like, fuck's sake. So we then went to a process of rodding where you would just put these rods up one by one, give them a bit of a squirt. And then we've kind of kept with that process, but we have a hose reel attachment that goes onto the truck. So that tended to be the approach. But the problem with so many of these old properties as well is they would have different structural interference in the chimney breasts themselves. So depending on if they were thatched properties or not and how they were constructed, so you would see a lot of fire spread going into the roof voids and stuff like that. So they could be tricky jobs. You'd stay there a little bit longer than you had to, wandering around the property, checking for hot spots and checking for, any smoke spread into different loft voids. And and some of them had shelves on them. So there'd be like a shelf halfway up the chimney breast where it would change direction. And you'd get a lot of built up and kindling and shit in there. So again, like we were just alluding to, if you haven't been to these before, or you haven't got somebody that's got a bit of experience that kind of goes, no, let's try and have a look at this, right? Go up to the first floor and, look at the gable end wall and see what, you've got to have, it's a little bit of an art form sometimes with the chimney fire.
Like I had one. So I went over to the States and had a great time, met a heap of firefighters and they were brilliant. And I took back a heap of ideas, right? And one of them was fighting chimney fires with dry chem extinguishers. Now, I'd never thought of this, right? Because our MO, we didn't have these rods. We just tip some water down there. Hopefully don't make too much mess. Always make way too much mess and leave the homeowner with a big cleanup.
Yeah.
So I was detailed to station to a station 13, and I was acting up for the day, and we got toned out to a fire. So we're hammering along. It's starting to show up. Like, and everyone in the back's telling me, make up. I'm like, no. Look, I just want to see what it is because I don't want to. We get there. It's a pub, chimney fire. Punters are still in there drinking. They serve food. They do all that, right? And I was like, cool, chimney fire. Let's have a crack at this dry chem. So we bring the dry chems in, we start to set up, we put some tarps down, we cover up the other fireplaces connected to the same chimney with the tarps. And by that stage, the senior screw turned up and I said, we're going to use dry chem and that should probably knock this out. So we hammered some dry chem in there and it instantly sucked all the tarps in the fireplace because there was that much contraction from the heat.
Yeah.
So sucked it straight up, right? So we fires out. We've had all this contraction. We've swept up the mess because it's just dry chemical. So I haven't flooded the pub and the pub was able to keep operating. So give that I know new techniques can be scary because you never tried them, but give the dry chem a go. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. I don't know why.
And the US guys, they swear by it. Yeah, the US guys swear by it. They're like, they carry little buckets of it so they can just drop it down from the top of the chimney if they need to. We just use charged extinguishers. But yeah, it was brilliant. And
but you had always attacked
that's really good. Where have you done it?
I think I remember reading a document at some point in time that when we talk about risk mitigation, I don't know if this was one of the reasons that folded into it, but there'd been a number of instances of firefighters falling off roofs because you tend to go either fucking late in the night or early in the morning where somebody thinks they've put the fire out or they've just left it burning. So we're climbing up wet roofs in the middle of the night, and I think people had had a couple of accidents, and people had heard about it and they just become scared and go, no, we're gonna the go-to approach is going to be attack it internally and rod the chimney. But again, echoing back a little bit to John McDonough's analogy of, if we try and protect people consistently and never expose them to any risk, we're actually going to make them more dangerous, because inevitably at some point we are going to put firefighters on roofs. And the fact that we are so averse to sending people aloft unnecessarily ultimately is going to make them more dangerous in those environments. I know firefighters that have been in 5 or 10 years. They haven't even been in an aerial ladder platform or something like that, let alone done any form of rope rescue or working at height. So when it does come to them doing it, or it does come to them saying, I'll just go and check the pot on the roof and do X, Y, Z, you're going to be putting them in a situation they've never been in before.
Quite daunting for them, and you got to feel for them. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to take us down that rabbit hole.
Not at all, mate. It was almost a challenging rabbit hole for me. I'll just cast my mind back for a minute. You moved into a training department maybe only after 5 or so years in yours. So you did 4 years and transferred to Metro Station, and then you did a year or so, and then moved to
Metro for 2. Yeah, 4 years at a regional centre, a year and a half, 2 years at an outer Metro Station, and then switched across to the Metropolitan Brigade, went into number 1 station, hung out there for a year, and then the opportunity came up to go be a structural firefighting instructor at the college, and I jumped on it. So when I joined, I remember doing fire science and structural firefighting. And that first fire science thing where it's like, hey, this is actually just science and it's not magic and it's not backdraft. It doesn't look at you, it doesn't breathe at you. You're not really fighting a beast. You're just fighting a chemical reaction. That really stung me. And I found that out just after I found out that we don't go around breaking doors and windows. So I was a bit brokenhearted by the whole thing, but it captured me instantly. And then we went and started doing some compartmental stuff, and we have fire investigation room. So the instructor burned a fire investigation room and put it out with an indirect attack using like 2 litres of water. And I'm like, man, this is cool. This is awesome.
That's good.
So as soon as I finished recruits, I started reading about it. Like I went and bought 3D Firefighting, because that's what our text was. And that's, Grimwood, Hart, and McDonough and Shan Rappel. And read that cover to cover, like in the first few weeks on station. And ever since then, I've just been reading and really passionate about structural firefighting.
What was
I love it.
urge to move into training what some might consider early on in your career? Because I think it's great for anybody to spend a stint in a training department, because you pick up so many skill sets. You get a kind of a condensified look into the fundamentals of it as well. And you're never too old or too young to continue to go on that learning journey. But how did you going into a training department change or did it at all change your perception of how it was when you joined, 5 or 6 years previously, to how training was being done then? Had you seen any changes in that short period of time, and what kind of drew you to it?
A huge amount of change. Number one, just a huge amount of change. Like the way we spoke to people, the way, like when I came on, so, he's our king too, right? Our fire service is your fire service. Yeah. Like we just carbon copied everything because we're you guys came out here and we've just continue the fight. So when I was trained, it was like a lot of just get in there, put the fire out, and very disjointed. So, you did BA and you did Ministry of Silly Walks, and then you did structural firefighting, but never the two shall meet, right?
Okay.
So then you're doing get to work drills, yeah, and you're there and you're like doing your Ministry of Silly Walk, and then someone's yelling at you to get low because you're in a fire and you've got to do some cooling, and then you've got to get up and do your Ministry of Silly Walk, and nothing ever really gelled. Okay. So when I came on the training department, because it was for a different brigade as well. So I'd changed brigades at this point. I wasn't working for the Rural Brigade. I was working for the Metropolitan Brigade. And their methodology of training was a lot more learner-focused. Like it was an adult learning environment. We weren't just shouting and yelling at you for no reason. We were trying to help you be better. Like that was our goal. You don't have to call me my rank out here when we're in the PLE on our turnout gear. You can call me whatever you want. I want you focusing on what we're doing here. I want you learning how to do this job safely and how to do it really well. So like the whole methodology of training had changed from being like shut up and do as you're told to, hey, how can I help you? Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and there's two schools of thought there. For me, I like the idea that it's not dictatorial, and I like the idea that you obviously have an open learning platform that people can feel comfortable asking questions and being curious. But there is the other side of the coin, which I've heard, is that it can sometimes breed a lack of discipline. Now, discipline again is a contentious word. People think of it as being told off or having done something wrong. But I think of discipline in a sense of self-discipline. I think of it in a sense of, professionalism, for want of a better description, which also kind of works in terms of like, I always say to people, there's freedom in discipline. And what I mean by that, while they seem juxtaposed, is like, if you have the ability to be self-disciplined, there's a tremendous amount of freedom that you can paint outside of the lines, because it's always underlined by a sense of self-discipline, by a sense of values and morals and non-negotiables. But I have seen in certain training departments in certain organizations a point whereby people can begin to have a lack of respect for the profession, for want of one thing, and then sometimes they can struggle when they do arrive on a station, that they think everything can be questioned. And because in training, it's all training, obviously it sounds stupid to say that, but like, it's all simulation. They've never actually been on an incident ground where someone's going to point at them and tell them to do something. And this is not the time for debate, or I'm not asking you for your input or your ideas. Obviously, if I'm asking you to do something dangerous, I wouldn't expect you to do it. But there almost does need to still remain an element of dictatorship on the incident ground, which actually I'm challenging that even as I say it. Whereas we want to have that chat around the watch table, we want to have that open forum, but there's an element of bleed over. I don't know if I'm making myself clear there. Does that make sense? It's like I still like to see aspects of discipline within training departments.
What you're talking about is setting clear expectations.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to be a dick when you're teaching, but you have to have a separation from your students. You're not their best mate. You're their instructor. You're there to teach them. You set expectations that, like, this job's about a switch, yeah? Like that a good firefighter on the watch has a good switch. They know when to joke around. They know when to muck around. They know when to take the piss, and, when they're having a cup of tea around the mess table. But as soon as they leave those doors out in the motor room, they've changed, yeah?
Sorry, I'm interrupting you there, but you're hitting that so perfectly on the head, and I've literally just written that down because that's going to be a fucking soundbite all day long. Having that switch, I think I'm going to let you carry on because I totally agree with you, but I just want to tell you that I agree with you because it's the fucking switch. I think some people can't clearly differentiate between, like, and you see it, like, sometimes if we're sitting on a truck in traffic and you're like, we are in the public now, so you should consciously be aware of things that you might be saying with the fucking window.
Stop.
Yeah. Do it when we get back to the truck.
Stop talking and saying what you're saying.
Yeah, we'll say that when we get back home. We'll talk about whatever we like. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
And you talk about this all the time in your podcast. We've got closed doors, and we should open them up a bit more. Like, the station is the community's fire station. The truck is the community's fire truck.
Absolutely.
But if we want to have those discussions, you can have them behind closed doors. But anyway, so you've got to set expectations for these people, right? And, like, I had an old SSO who's retired from the job now, but he had one of the best sayings, and I tell it to everyone that I can: don't make the joke a job, but don't take the job like a joke.
Fucking love that. Give it to me again, because don't make the joke. That's love.
Don't make the joke a job, but don't take the job like a joke.
Yeah, 100%. Love it.
But, like, and to me, that's brilliant. And like with setting expectations, I mean, I give the recruits because you're in training. I heard when you were talking to Ange, yeah, you've moved into training now.
Yes, very recently. I did about 16 years on the trucks, and now I'm starting working with all the recruits. And again, just like echoing back to what you were saying, it's always been one of my bucket list things to have on there. I want to be stood in front of a bunch of people that are just brimming with that excitement and enthusiasm. And I'm just that fucking eternal student. I'm the kid that's asking the questions that no one else maybe thinks to ask or is too embarrassed to ask. I've got no ego or humility. I'm just like, I want to be in that environment, and it's a tremendous privilege. I'll be doing all of my tickets over the next 12 months. And yeah, I'm probably where you were a number of years ago. You know, I've been and done a series of things in between that. But sorry, yeah, I'm super excited to be coming into that.
You would know, being in the trainee school and having been trainee, and you talked about them. You know, the firefighters, new firefighters on the watch that come out of the school and they've spent however many weeks your training course is norming and storming and becoming a person in their own right, and then they come out the watch and they're acting bigger than their boots. Yeah. Well, like
Yeah.
they're the 4 and 20. Yeah.
Yeah.
They've been in 4 minutes back like they've done 20 years.
20, yeah.
So like, yeah. So like I tell the recruits, you know, I give them the nobody likes you, but that's okay kind of speech. Like, you're a liability speech, which basically is, you're a liability, no one's going to like you. And in 5 years' time, this is going to make so much sense to you, because when the new recruit comes out and you're starting to get a bit comfortable, you're starting to reach that rank of leading, you're probably going to be like, oh man, another one. And I tell them why. Like, you know, first of all, we've got to train you. So we've got to take time out of what we like to do to help you out so you can pass your probationaries. Yeah. Number two, you're probably going to throw a lot of rotations out. You can't drive, so you're probably going to keep people in the driver's seat where they want to be sitting in the back seat having wares.
Yeah.
So they're just going to be driving. They might be driving for 12 months.
That's
you're going
a
to throw
great
out the
point,
rotations
sorry.
of detail.
That does breed some. Yeah. I didn't even think about that actually, but I had it on the watch that I was just managing before I moved into this role. And to be honest, like, can we just peer off there for a second? I want to ask you about driving. Is driving a mandatory skill set in your brigade? Because it's not in a lot of the services in the UK. It's an optional skill set that you can take on board. But I think we are rapidly moving towards a point in the UK Fire and Rescue Service where we're not going to have enough fucking drivers, because we don't pay you more to drive, and actually you're risking your own license. I mean, it was always a dream for me. I was like, I want to drive the fire engine, and I did it for 10 years and I loved it. But I see a lot of recruits coming in now and I'm like, hey, you know, we'll do this, and after a couple of years you'll be able to do your driving, and they're like, oh no, I've no interest in driving. And I'm like, shit, you know, I never anticipated people wouldn't want to drive the trucks.
Well, drive operate's mandatory for us.
Every member of the crew has to have the drive.
Firefighter.
Ah, you see, we should do that.
So we work on recruit, FF1, FF2, FF3 qualified. So to be a qualified firefighter, you need to be a drive operator.
Right. So it is one of our. So when we stuck to national operational standards, we used to say you have to do your NOSs. You have to do 3, 4, 5, and 6 to be a competent firefighter, and then. Oh God, I wish I hadn't said this now. I'm testing myself. I think Firefighter 9, National Occupational Standards. Someone's going to tell me I'm wrong here. I think Firefighter 9 was driving. It's a fucking long time since I did it. But people, no, Firefighter 9 is your watch manager assessments. But anyway, it was either 7 or 8 or something like that. Was your driving, and it was optional. You didn't get paid anymore to do it. As soon as you did 3, 4, 5, and 6, you get your competent pay. And they didn't have to do driving. And I don't know who the fuck missed that out of the contract, but it was a real miss. And it was never a problem for a long time because people wanted to drive. But I know I'm repeating myself here, but I feel like we're going to get to a point where we've just accidentally created a beast there, because people aren't going to want to drive. And echoing back to what you were saying, let's bring it back to that conversation, is that people start to begrudge it because they're like, I'm fucking driving every tour. I don't want to fucking drive all the time. Because actually, as you have alluded to in like the two responding analogy, the driver's a big responsibility. They're doing the comms, they're doing the BA board, they're doing the fucking pumping, they're running down the street in the middle of the night trying to find a fucking hydrant. It's a tough job. You're almost the IC's second hand, to be honest, because you're in the front with them, talking about strategy en route, talking about approach. It's a big job. It's a responsibility.
Yeah, you come in support resource, as well as pump operation, as well as BA safety. Like, you are doing so much. And like, don't get me wrong, I love a steer. Like, it's one of the reasons that I don't want to promote yet, because I'm still having too much fun driving, sitting in the backseat, driving, sitting in the backseat, driving, sitting in the backseat.
Yeah.
When I get sick of doing those things, I'll stop. But like, coming back to the conversation, so, you know, we've got to train you, and we've got to take time out of our watch to train you. And that's cool. But if you're a dick, it isn't. You're going to probably throw out our rotations around the truck because someone's going to have to drive because you can't. You're going to have, like, we have to keep an eye on you at all times to make sure you don't look at PowerPoint or something. Yeah, because you're new in the job. You don't know how to look out for dangers.
Yeah.
And you're going to cut into me overtime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're going to throw me out on detail more because we can't detail you out of the station because
yes, so like, mate, that's a great shout. We're having that a lot. Yeah.
So like, if you come on the watch and you come in with this attitude that you're amazing or that whatever, like, you're just not paying the respect. whatever it is, you know.
Yeah, I
We're just
covered
gonna
this on a recent
man. Like,
episode.
we're
Said,
not
like,
going to bully you.
no, I said like you just be a great firefighter to start with. No one cares that you know how many rungs are on the ladder or that you know the exact pumping capacity or whatever. Nobody cares about that. They want to know
How big the
are-
fuel tank on the fan is, because you know
yeah,
that's important.
yeah. Are you helping out with the station scrub? You know, are you chipping
Yeah,
in when it's time to get your arms in the sink? Do you know what I mean? Are you on top of the station
yeah.
tests?
Like,
Are
so
you presenting yourself? Are you 5 minutes early
if
for parade?
you said it a while back on that same podcast. Get good at mopping the floors, because you know how to do that. I don't need to show you how to do that. I don't need to take time out of my day to help you with that. Yeah, and that's paying back a little bit of paying back a little bit to the people on the watch who are putting in for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're a team, and team means that you have to put in as well.
Mm.
And it's okay that you're a liability. Yeah, we're going to work on you. But if you're a liability with an attitude, it makes it really hard for us to want to.
Yeah. But I also
Do
think
you know what I
like
mean? Like,
yeah,
to bring you on.
station like when they say a
And I'm
village
probably going
raises
to
a
get
child.
I'm probably going to get charged for this.
Nah, you won't. But when I say, the old analogy of a village raises a
Yeah.
child, when I see watches and stuff, if they do unfortunately turn against a recruit or there's a little bit of frustration based on one of the many things that you've articulated there, I think that if when you're sending your recruit back to training school and stuff like that, that is a reflection of your watch. That person is going as a representation of how you've looked after them, how you've developed them. And if they are struggling or failing in a certain capacity, that's a reflection of you as a team. And there's no point standing there going, oh, they don't fucking listen, or they don't this, or they don't that. Well, then what have you done about it? Do you know what I mean? But it can be very difficult with the different mindsets of different ages.
They're our liability, and we have to own them.
Yeah.
They're our liability. We have to own that liability, and it's up to us to make them a really competent, not just a competent firefighter. I'm not going to just say competent firefighter. We got to make them a really competent firefighter, but someone that fits in as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's a bit of spiritual guidance and a bit of mentorship. You know, like they're not like you've got. What are your old hands? Like, how long have they done in your service?
I would say old hands in this service probably doing 20 years.
20 years. So you've got people that they're in their 40s. Yeah.
Yep.
And now we've got a kid that's in their teens coming on the shift.
Mm-hmm.
A guy or a girl coming on the shift in their teens. They're very different people generationally, let alone everything else. Yeah. So like it's up to us to kind of help create that synergy as a unit together and how to interact with each other and how to keep the peace and how to bring those people along on the ride. Like show them that we're not trying to punish them. You know, we're just setting expectations and we're going to meet them. But also teaching them like traditions are good. Like Ange was talking about this, like embracing the traditions, embracing the challenges, not getting confronted by them on your podcast. And I was like, wow, that's really awesome.
When we're thinking about different learning styles and different cultural differences and like the way that people have been raised in the 21st century, and you said earlier, sorry, that you were a butcher before this, and then you tried to do a little bit of time at uni, but you'd done some hands-on jobs. You'd worked in shops as a younger person, probably being treated and spoken to in ways that people won't have those character building moments as much anymore. So how was it different so we said the training was different, when you started in the training department from when you first joined. Have you seen any changes in sort of learning styles, or even, for want of a better description, like holes in people's personal development? Because you and I growing up as kids is different to people growing up now. Like, for example, my youngest son is doing his driving lessons at the minute. He may not, or certainly my daughter, she's 10, she may not do lessons in a car that like I did. She may learn in an electric car. Do you know what I mean? Just as a simple example, but she won't be getting her arms under the bonnet and learning how to change the oil or, learning how to change a tire. She might not get that sort of development. And then that comes into gaps in knowledge when we see people entering professions like the fire service, because they've perhaps never opened a toolbox before. They've never, as simple as silly as an example as that is, have you seen any holes in people's development that you've had to adapt for that we didn't before? Like, we assumed people would come into the job with a certain amount of common sense or a certain amount of life skills that perhaps they're not coming in with these days.
100%. Like take it back 15, 20 years ago, it was mainly tradies, yeah? Like the average firefighter had a trade, usually, like the majority of them would. And
Yeah.
nowadays, it's
Yeah.
probably becoming different, like, degrees and corporate experience and all that kind of stuff. And people have grown up with different things. Like I've had a few firefighters come to me and say, "Hey, like just quietly, I've never used a drill in my life.
Yeah.
Can you show me?" And it's like, "Yeah, cool, dude. Let's get out there and we'll grab the whole watch and we'll go out and we'll run down the hardware store. We'll buy some wood. We'll buy some metal.
Yeah,
We'll
but you're
drill some
doing that,
stuff.
or
We'll put some
your
screws
example there,
in."
sorry, is one of which where they're on the station, and I hear feedback
Yeah.
sometimes when you have
Oh,
a
sorry. I
recruit
get what you're
arrive on
saying. Like
station and they
training
go,
school.
yeah, and they go, oh fucking hell, you didn't cover any of this at training school. What do you mean you don't know what a monkey wrench is? What do you mean you don't know what Stilson wrench or mole grips or whatever it is? Well, we never used to cover that in
We
training
are
school. We
going
just assumed people knew what they were.
for us. I think that's changed a bit. And like I'm probably more in the structural space than the recruit space, but so I could be speaking out of turn. Someone will correct me if I am, and if they listen to it. But
Ah, don't worry about it.
we do go through we do go through the toolboxes with them and stuff.
Yeah.
But we also pump them full of everything in 18 weeks, right? So they might see a drill. Yep, these are the drills. These are the like we give them an angle grinder and we teach them. We sign them off on an angle grinder ticket. I know that. We might pull out all the tools in the toolbox, but we might not actually use them all, like a pair of pliers or something like that. Like you might not get to use a wrench and that, but you will see it on the recruit course. But they don't learn proficiency on it or competency on it.
How about things like
Except for the angle
construction
grinder
and
and the
stuff
power
like that?
tools.
Do you go into depth about construction with any of your recruits? Because this is just stuff that's been racing through my head as I've entered into the department. When we talk about reference points on a building, floors, door frames, joists, gable ends, eaves, things like that, whatever it might be. Actually, we don't necessarily teach that at any real point, I don't think, unless you read it in a case study or unless you are interested enough to go and read a book on building construction. We don't talk about it really. It's not something we cover.
So
We don't cover it at training school.
We don't go into the depth that the US do, right? Like US building construction is a huge thing, and like they've written some amazing books. Problem is, our houses are built pretty differently to some of their houses. Like we don't do balloon frame or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
But they'll go into it in fire travel. We do touch on it. So have you heard of a bloke called Shen Raphael? Shen's brilliant, mate. He's a legend. And when you speak to him, you have to speak to him about his methodology of reading the fire that him and Ben go into in their book, Reading the Fire, around BSAF. And the first part's the building or where the fire exists, right? And it teaches you how to read that building in terms of age of construction, layout, materials, occupancy, voids and shafts, all that kind of stuff. So that you're taking that into account. But as far as depth goes, modern construction uses gang nails and laminated timber and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't hold up to fire as much. We're not going into like how a truss roof is cantilevered or anything like that. We're giving enough.
Yeah, because
it could always be better. Like building construction is such a big point.
Yeah. We've had changes massively in the UK because we're seeing a lot of changes in construction, and it was something that really came through when I was speaking to, I think it was John McDonough, because I think we were talking about ventilation techniques and some of the studies and case studies that have been done in the US versus Australia versus the UK, where flow paths and stuff were dictated on or were applied to buildings that were tended to be more open plan or tended to be of simply timber construction. Whereas when you flip that into the UK, where we see a lot more smaller compartments, first and foremost, we see a lot of obviously brick built constructions in the UK, whereas the construction methods were very different from continent to continent. And unknowingly, that led to a difference in the way that firefighting techniques have been developed. And it was something that really came out when they then started to do a lot more international sharing and a lot of the stuff that came through 3D firefighting, because their nozzle techniques and things like that were based on certain construction that didn't exist in other parts of Europe or other parts of the world. So some of that hasn't kept up to date with the construction changes that have happened in the UK. So like we see a lot of people smashing out walls in the UK and having a lot of open plan homes, and that will change the way that we approach a fire. That should change people's approaches when it comes 100%. To ventilation, but a lot of that won't won't be factored for, even just in terms of like changes in double glazing. I mean, he was saying even in today that a lot of Australia will still have a lot of single glazed properties because they didn't have the challenges, or they didn't have the climate like we have in the UK, where we get really cold winters, or it's predominantly wet all year round. So ventilation techniques will change massively because properties won't have naturally ventilated. They won't have created those vertical or horizontal vents through a window break, and that again will have to change the incident commander's approach. And I don't think we spend much time embedding that knowledge in people, including myself. I mean, I'm still super green, even though my dad ran a construction company for like 40 years. My construction knowledge is still nowhere near so many people that I speak to.
Well, even in that example there that you're talking about, right? Like, we're not even thinking about. So we base everything on the traditional compartmental fire curve. Yeah, not traditional. Sorry, just the compartmental fire behaviour curve. The little graph with heat release rate over time, and it's a bell curve, and it goes up. And then if we limit the ventilation, it only goes up certain amounts, and then it drops down. If we increase the ventilation, it'll just skyrocket again, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, we base most of our fire behaviour training on that curve. That curve only exists, and I'm probably going to get yelled at here by someone, but that curve can only exist in certain compartments, right?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Those case studies with all the thermal indicators were done in certain environments.
Well, you can't have that uniform compartment temperature. And like John Chubb is a great mate of mine, and he was out here in Australia, came and visited, and because he had a firefighter that he used to work with that works for my service now, so he came down to see him. And we went to the training college, and we got talking about this, and where does it top out? And like, if you ask like Grimwood, who I think Paul's one of the smartest men going around in fire behaviour training, that compartmental fire behaviour technique, that compartmental fire behaviour curve that we base everything on, is about 70 to 100 square meters, right? As soon as it's over that, we're moving into this travelling fire curve, right, where we're going to have less. Because it's got such a large space, it's got more access to oxygen, it's able to exhaust better if it's got the openings. Yeah. Fire development's going to be driven more by fuel arrangement rather than by flashover. Because by the time something's getting fully involved, something's gone into decay. You're not getting that uniform temperature. So our methodologies have to change around fighting those fires. And that's where we're probably looking at more of the jets into the overpressure. To do a bit of surface and a bit of gas cooling at the same time until we can get there and put it out. I mean, like, at the end of the day, we've got to be effective. So rule 1, be effective. Rule 1.1, be efficient. And that's how I look at it. We need to put that fire out.
I saw this really stand out to me. We've just released, or it might be coming out this weekend, I can't remember, a case study around Leo's supermarket where the death of Fleur Lombard, who was the first female firefighter to die in wartime.
Just a couple of weeks after Blaney, yeah?
Yeah. And
that was just a couple of weeks after Blaney, yeah.
That was a perfect example of, it was obviously a supermarket, so a much wider floor plan, a much more open-spaced environment, very high fire loading, but it had, not theoretically, it had already ventilated. There was two very large entrances into the supermarket, and it had also ventilated vertically, but they still experienced a flashover in the environment due to
rapid fire progression.
Rapid fire progression.
Like it was rapid fire progression,
and it was something that came out in the case study and in the outcomes, and that kind of shone a light on the fact that, again, not all rules can be applied in a situation like that, when you say, oh, well, it's ventilated from 3 points, so the likelihood is extremely unlikely. And I mean, just the fact that they sent them in with guidelines at all was still extremely
scary. But it's still extremely likely. Like, it can still happen.
Yeah,
but it's not the whole compartment flashing over. It's not moving at the speed that a flashover moves at. Do you know what I mean? It's being controlled a lot by fuel arrangement and those type of things. So you're still going to get very significant fires. You're going to get higher heat release rates. You've got more fuel, you've got more oxygen getting involved in these fires. So you're going to have these really big fires, but we have to change our methodology. Your little gas cools aren't doing much there. And like John, right now in the structural firefighting world, or the CFB2 world, there's this big conversation going on around the UL studies, if you've had a look at them. The fire attack studies. And like, it showed that, like their studies have shown that straight stream cooling cool temperatures greater, but it used more water and all this kind of stuff. So there's massive debate going on in the background, and it seems to be an either-or debate.
Okay.
Where it isn't. It's kind of the appropriate run for the appropriate fire. So recognising the fire conditions, utilising the most appropriate technique to be effective and efficient. So John McDonough always says, we want to put the right amount in the right format in the right place. And like what CFBT's done and this is just an observation, and it's probably a very poor one, but CFBT, some people have taken out of it, not all, but some people have taken out of it. We use little droplets of water, not much, small flow rates, and we do a lot of gas cooling. Yeah. Where what we're saying is you need small droplets to cool gases so that you can make your way to put water on the fire.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't stand at the entry point and just gas cool till you're fucking blue in the face. You need to progress and actually put the fire out at some point in time.
Yeah. And put a big straight stream on that fire at a big flow rate to knock it down as quickly as possible, with a main jet or something like that. So it's been a very interesting kind of like, how do we teach this better? How do we give people this information? And it's a hard one, because it seems to swing like it's a pendulum. We can't just sit it in just right. Like we swing one way, then we swing the other, then we swing the other way. And it's like they're both correct in the right application for the right type of fire development. In the right
I think
fire
that's
curve.
where
where
we're speaking about guidance more than doctrine. Because we need to just expand, myself included. We need to expand that spectrum of awareness so that we have these different strategies, or want a better description, to guidance, so that in different circumstances you can understand these indicators and adopt the right strategy. Whereas if you get too prescriptive, you can end up applying one set doctrine to an environment where you're not seeing the feedback, you're not seeing the outcome that you want. But if you're too fixated in that one method, you're doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. Do you know what I mean?
100%. Like we saw that maybe at a famous fire in England not long ago.
Yeah.
The doctrine said, do one thing. And as you said, they're right for the wrong reasons. Like we can't be prescriptive with doctrine. But if we go back to what we started talking about, right back to the start of this, where we don't have that experience. So how do we build this context for people? How do we show them the differences?
So have you continued to stay in the training department? Because one of the reasons we kind of engaged with each other was you recently came over to the UK, and I've had a couple of people, Mike Stashwitz being one of them, who have spoke very highly about the contributions from some of our international colleagues at the High Rise Conference in London. And I know you've going on to do a little bit of work where you went obviously then to Moreton on the Marsh, and you've got some things planned for the new year as well. How long did you spend in the training department? How come you've been given an opportunity to come and do these conferences in the UK, and what did you sort of take away from them?
I can only see that by looking back. Like I sit here now. I came home from Moreton, right? So just to give everyone a bit of context around Moreton, the Fire Services College and GLOCO and Elkhart sponsored a conference on high-rise firefighting to be held at Moreton on Marsh, and it had international instructors from all around the world. We had Spain, we had Italy, we had myself from Australia, we had Ireland, we had Germany, we had the USA, we had England, we had UK. We had people from everywhere around the world come into Moreton, and I remember sitting there like days before the conference when we're comparing firefighting techniques, going, "How did I get here?"
Yeah.
I'm looking around like, oh, here I am. Like there was a bad joke. Like we had a training fire in one of the props at Moreton, and an Australian, an Irishman, an American, and an Italian were on a hose line together. That just sounds like a great start to a bad joke. But like I remember looking around going, how did I get here? And like so go back. So I went to training. I'm really passionate about training. To answer the first question on do I stay in training, I don't. I float in and out, and I think that's really important. I think if you don't know what's happening on the watch, if you're not going to real fires, if you're just preaching from the hymn book that you've been given as the training manual, and you're not accounting for people's lived experiences. So, like as John said, we have a lot of single glazed windows and a lot of tiles roofs here in Australia. So a lot of our buildings can vent before we get here. So when we first introduced this aspect of gas cooling, people were like, I've never been to a fire with a neutral plane. I've only ever been to fires that are blowing out the back windows and out the roof, and we go in there and there's no smoke above me.
Yeah. Whereas for us,
and
everything
like,
we go to, really, you open the door and there's a fucking neutral plane, and we use that as an indicator. That's we're looking for it to tell us what to do next. Whereas over there, you can be in for 20 years and never see one.
Yeah, so you can't turn around to that person and go, "No, you're talking rubbish," because they've had a lived experience.
And then you've lost them.
You've got to go, yeah, cool.
Lost them, yeah.
Yeah, and you've lost them straight away. They come back from the college and they go, they don't even know what they're talking about. Some young bloke who's only done a few years in the job's telling me that I've got to be doing this gas cooling stuff when I've never even seen this neutral plane thing he's talking about. So, it's all rubbish, and 3% of fires, and you just lose all credibility. So if you're jumping between the school and the watch, and you're out there and you're living the experiences with them, you're agreeing with them, you're saying, yeah, like, look, cool, you've been to all these fires, and yeah, that's 100% how you fight them, how you fought them, all that kind of stuff. But what happens, there's other fires that live on the spectrum of fire, and that's what we're talking about here today. You've got to bring them back to that kind of stuff. But so I jump in and out of training, and I'm quite passionate, and I read a lot, and I do a lot, and I've always chased really busy fire stations. So I try to go. Here's a trick for young players that listen to the podcast. If you don't think you're getting enough BA wears, complain that you just don't go to fires, and they keep putting you in BA. So the joke at my first station was, he doesn't go to fires, and then someone tallied up and it turned out that I'd had the most BA wears for the station for the year.
Love it.
But anyways, so jumping around there, and anyway, so when we formed that organisation that we are now out of the Metropolitan Fire Brigade Country Fire Authority, we need to rewrite all our doctrine because we didn't have a set of doctrine. We didn't have the doctrine for the new organisation. We had 2 existing doctrines, and it was a great opportunity for us to expand how we did things and what we did. Now, our chief before the formation of the organisation was a former chief of Merseyside. And he also sat on the National Fire Chiefs Council. So he brought over British doctrine. So when you talk about the NOG, I know the NOG. And we use that as the basis.
So that's becoming quite a
procedures.
Popular thing. I don't know what this... there's obviously, historically, sorry, just for a second, there's always been a really strong UK Australia connection, because there's actually one of the gentlemen I've just been speaking to in London Fire Brigade. He was going to come on the podcast, and then he said, Pete, I'm actually moving to Australia. I'm moving with my family, and he's accepted a position over there. That I won't share his name because we're yet to record, and perhaps he won't want me to. But there's a lot of that going on. Sorry, rewind, but carry on. So this was an ex-chief of Merseyside that came over.
Yeah, and
you did well to fucking understand a single word they said.
Oh, mate, he's a hard man and a scouse man, and he's a very impressive man, and he'd be someone to look at, and we can talk about it later to get him on the podcast because he's brilliant. But he brought over the NOG and started introducing the NOG to us, and from that we developed what we call operational method statements, which other brigades were called standard operating procedures. And then from that we have operational practices, which is like how you wear a BA set and that kind of stuff. But when we formed, we had to write all this stuff. So we were pulling in subject matter advisors, and I was selected as a subject matter advisor on the structural firefighting side of things. And we came in and we started writing stuff. And that led to me reaching out to everybody. Like, I'm just hitting emails, and like, if you ever want to learn something from a firefighter, just email because they always reply. So like, I'm emailing John Chubb, right? Like, just cold calling him. Hey mate, I work for this organisation and we're updating our doctrine, and I noticed that you've been doing a heap of work in the high rise space and we're going down this journey. Can we talk? And I did it with a great mentor and mate of mine, Jerry Tracy from the FDMY. Like, we looked at everyone. I looked at what John Chubb did for Dublin in the high-rise space and went, that's what we need to do with everything. Just go, cool, here's our problem. Here's what we currently do. Here's the gaps in that practice between the two. What is everyone else in the world doing around this problem? And then let's apply that to our operational context and see what works and what doesn't. Like, we're not Americans. We don't have truck companies. We're not going to go down the truck company path. But can we take anything from that way of operating that will enhance our operational response capacity and capability? And so that led to me then getting invited to the Tall Building Conference by Fire XIFE, bloke called Russ Timpson over there runs it, and he just reached out and said, "Hey, like all these people you've been talking to said that you're a pretty cool guy to listen to and talk with. Do you want to
So
come over here
just pause me there for a
and
second.
talk?"
What rank are you that you're doing all this?
I'm a leading firefighter.
So that is awesome that you're because there's a thing that happens sometimes. So we're trying to, and just pause for a second. So we're trying to bring in more firefighters as part-time instructors because there's something written at some point in time, or there was an assumption that you need to be a leading firefighter or a crew manager or a watch commander to be able to start being involved with supporting on policy, supporting on training methods, going to professional development conferences and things like that. And it accidentally alienates some people who are actually most passionate, like firefighters and leading firefighters, who are most passionate about the job and who are perhaps most got their finger on the pulse of what's really happening out there and can accelerate that feedback loop and get what we actually need, versus people that have perhaps been off the trucks for a long time. It's like saying, oh, you need to wait till you're a DAC or a station commander or a group manager or whatever the terminology is in different services. But some of those people aren't necessarily the best placed with the most recent and up-to-date knowledge, or even the most accessible to utilize, like going back to their station and putting in place some of these and trialing different methods. They're not necessarily best placed to do it, but it sounds as though Ian, just as an LF, not saying just as, but like you were given those opportunities. I just wanted to pause for a second because I think that's a really wonderful thing to do.
And I've got to reach out to some great station officers, senior station officers, and what we call commanders, who've had my back and supported me and gone, "Hey, man, like you know what you're talking about. You're the one on the pointy end. Come in." And like without the backing of those ranking officers, I would not be anywhere where I am. Like for instance, so
did you have any pushback on that though?
That I do internationally.
Did you have any pushback on that? Was there any people who were like,
I didn't, but the
who the fuck is Gerard? Why is he getting these opportunities? Because there can be an element of that. People going, we're on fucking shift all the time. He keeps fucking off doing all this stuff, pissing about all over the country or whatever. Did you ever get any of that? And how did you deal with it?
I get asked, like, why you? And I say, because I work. Like, what are you doing? You're sitting on shift. Like, don't get me wrong. If I'm completely honest, I don't want to be an instructor.
Okay.
I want to sit on the watch. I want to sit on the watch. I didn't join the job to sit at the training college and teach people about fires. I joined the job to sit on the watch and go to fires. But I believe that we can be doing it better. So I have two options. I can sit on the watch and complain, or I can do something about it. And I'm going to choose to do something about it every day of the week.
No, you see, that's not what most people do. That's not the approach. It's easier to sit back and bitch about it. I've seen. Seems to be very popular.
100%. Yeah. So I put myself out there, and so I pay for a lot of my stuff out of my own pocket. But what that's given back to me is massive. But for the first England one, the organisation came to the table. Now, when I talk about senior officers having my back, the senior station officer who really believed in me saw that I had this opportunity, knew that I couldn't afford it, and said, "All right, we'll try and go through the brigade to send you." Right. This senior station officer was on his commander's course. I'm holidaying in the USA after going to FDIC, and now I'm just like cranking on over there, going to fire stations and seeing mad sites and doing New York and LA and all that. This bloke is on his commander's course, fighting for me to go represent the organisation in London.
Wow.
That's the backing. That's the support I have. So, like, a couple of things. I don't know nothing. I just, learn lots and think lots. And so nothing I say is, an original thought. It's all come from people like John McDonough, Jerry Tracy, John Chubb, all those type of people. They've had a massive influence on my life. And I'm supported heavily by people. But when I came back from England, the organisation spent money sending me there, so they want their pound of flesh on the way home, yeah? So I delivered them a 14,000-word APA referenced document saying everything I learned. Now, none of it was my opinion. It was all referenced. It's all cited from here. Campfire Rescue Service are doing this. Essex are doing this. London are doing this. This is the smoke curtain, and this is what it does, and that's according to this. And I delivered that to them so that they're now taking that TLT to form a strategy paper. But 14,000 words and I think 9 or 10 versions of it. Like I rewrote the thing twice because it was horrible. um, it was hours and hours and hours out of my personal time to do that. But I have to pay back the organisation. And more importantly than paying back the organisation, I had to represent the senior command staff that fought for me to go. I owed it to them more than anyone else that their word means something and that their belief in people means something. So that when they put someone else up next time for something else, it gets supported and people keep getting these opportunities to go around because there's nothing better. Like it, developmentally, it's just accelerated me so much. I can't get over the opportunities I've had because of this stuff.
Mate, you're absolutely right.
But yeah, it's just been amazing.
And you need to be humble enough to be able to do that as well. Like you said it earlier about how the fuck did I end up in this room, or what am I doing stood on this line with all these incredible people, in Morton on the Marsh. I think about it all the time. Like I am absolutely nobody from nowhere. I'm not even the best firefighter at my goddamn watch or station, or certainly the training department or anything like that. So I do have every now and again people saying, why is that person speaking to you? Or why the hell are you spoken to that chief or that person in that organization? Because firstly, I just asked, I was stupid enough to be able to just go and ask. And then I was also like,
you just can't call them. They're fine.
Yeah, they don't mind it. But also like you have to be willing to look like a bit of a dick sometimes. Like I get into conversations. I mean, it's even happened today on a couple of occasions where you've started speaking to me about something and I'm like, oh Christ, I need to stretch back in the mind here. But also you need to be willing to get it wrong sometimes, and you need to not be married to certain ideas so much that you feel like you're going to be embarrassed when you get it wrong, or when you misquote something. That is the only best way. I always call the podcast Learning Out Loud, because that's exactly what it is, but only through, and you said there, none of these thoughts are original thought, but it's important that through different doctrine, new policies, new procedures, different teaching methods, different communication methods like the podcast, that we continue to repeat these things and send it through that learning cycle once again to be able to keep it relevant and to pass that knowledge. I mean, stuff like when we're speaking about Fleur Lombard and stuff like that, these case studies are 10, 20, 30 years old. Some of the stuff that we've covered from London Fire Brigade, from the King's Crossfire and stuff like that, this stuff is so old, but it's going to get forgotten if we don't take hold of it again, look at the relevancy. What do we need to take out? What do we need to throw away? What is still useful and relevant today, so that we don't have to learn all of these lessons again? Like you said, when you were putting together all these policies and procedures, and I know you're only one of a massive team that was doing that, there's probably lots of people we need to acknowledge for it. It's about going back, picking up what's been done before, what's relevant, what can we use again, learn from people like Chubb, McDonough, Tracy, all the people that you've mentioned there, and bringing it up to speed with what we're putting in place today. Otherwise, that stuff gets lost and we're just going to have to reinvent the wheel or learn all the lessons again. And sometimes if you have to learn those lessons again, it will come at the cost of somebody hurting themselves or somebody injuring themselves.
Yeah, it's too hard a lesson to learn. And we owe it to people like Fleur to learn from her death. Like we owe it to her. Like she's made this sacrifice. Unfortunately, she was the one that was just in the wrong seat at the wrong time, And she was doing the best job she could with the knowledge she had. But we owe it to them to do everything we can to learn as much as we can from their deaths. And it's a big thing in America when they talk about their debriefs. Like, there's never blame. It's not who did wrong, it's what went wrong and how can we learn from it. And that's a massive thing. And like, I don't know, like maybe our culture's probably placed too much blame on it, on us. Like I don't know.
I think it has in the
UK. I'm speaking a bit out of turn here.
No, I agree with you. It's actually more and more difficult for me to get hold of really valuable debriefs these days, because people are so worried and protective about who's going to get positioned in blame and who's going to get sued, who's going to get it. And I'm like, we close down all the doors and we almost what's the word I'm looking for? We black out so much of these reports that in doing so, we also black out the lessons. We hold back, we don't share things publicly about where these lessons can be learned. And that echoes back to this aspect of so many services operating in silos. Sometimes they don't even share the lessons with each other. Somebody will have an injury or somebody will have a near miss. There's a calculation, isn't there? How many near misses are equal to one life-changing injury? There's a correlation between that. But if we're not sharing the near misses, we're not sharing the accidents that almost could have been, we're setting somebody up for a failure, because there's a lesson to be learned there and we're not sharing that. And that's the whole thing again about having these types of conversations with people like you. I want to take down that fear of committing professional suicide. And we've both kind of mentioned it through this conversation, like, oh God, someone might have a problem with me saying this, or somebody might, send me an email off the back of this. I'm like, look, we need to forgive each other a little bit more. We need to give each other a little bit of space to step outside the lines and know that it's not done out of malice. We're not sharing this information because we're trying to embarrass anybody or misquote anybody or anything like that. Through both of us, and it's all the conversations that I have with the best of the knowledge that we have at this moment in time. We are fallible, we are human, we will make mistakes, we will misquote things, but it comes from a place of trying to share this knowledge. We've been out into the wilderness, we've collected a few useful nuggets, and we're trying to bring them back and share them with everybody else so that they haven't got to go out there and hurt themselves and have those costs that we've alluded to already.
Yeah, like there's an old saying, I forget who says it, but it's like, it's wise to learn from experience. It's wiser to learn from the experience of others.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
That's it. You just, if you've done a mistake, I want to learn from you. And like, I make mistakes every day, and like, being as passionate as I am and teaching as much as I do, and you'll know this. I'm trying not to blow smoke up my own ass, but you kind of get a reputation, oh, that's fire guy, they're the structural instructors, they know lots and all this kind of stuff, and people start to look at you, and I tell the recruits, don't hold me on a pedestal because I'll disappoint you every time. Like, I'll leave the training college, I haven't jumped a truck. Like, I'm about to go on shift next week or this weekend after doing 6 months at training college, and I reckon, I'll be like, oh bugger, where's my radio? God, I better put that on. Where's this? Where's that? Like, I'll look fumbly as hell because I haven't been jumping trucks. I haven't been going to calls. Yeah. And, like, no one's invaluable. It's all about just sharing the information so that everyone gets access to it. Like, I'm not a great firefighter. I'm a journeyman. Like, all I'm doing here is just trying to be the best person I can be and bring others and try and make others, which is probably more importantly, the best they can be, so that we can all rely on each other. We can all be better. We can be the service that we want to be. Because I'm really passionate about trying to be the best service that we can be. Like, we've got to meet that community expectation. We've got to be able to respond to their emergencies and them have confidence in us that we're there to help them and that we will help them,
So take me into a little bit more about the High Rise Conference in London, because there you were one of the people speaking around tall building, high rise doctrine. What was it like, for people that obviously haven't been? Some of it's covered online and people will probably drop a few links in below, but what sort of stuff was covered there? What did you take away from it? What did you yourself get an opportunity to speak on?
The Tall Building Fire Safety Conference, and like, coming as a firefighter, I'm used to talking to firefighters, firefighter things on that level. And I walk into this room at this conference, and it is everyone and anyone that has a vested interest in tall buildings. We had people from insurance, we had professors that are investigating fire sciences, and cladding and all that kind of stuff. We had people that do test rates for building materials, engineers. Everyone was there, and they were all speaking about different topics, and it was absolutely amazing. I learned so much. Like, think about insurance, right? Insurance claims. How much could we learn as firefighters from looking at insurance damages, do you reckon? Because I was blown away.
Well, I've got a little bit of an insight into that, because I know that we would learn a hell of a lot from it. I've looked at quite a few documentation on it, because they're the sort of people that actually have to get into the nuts and bolts of the tangible costs of these things when it comes to communities and it comes to the socioeconomic impact and how that correlates to us as fire and rescue services. We could learn so much from that, but again, we're a little bit ignorant to it sometimes. But please go on.
Yeah, and then like, we had a university there that was taking data from FRIS reports, I think you call them, your fire reports, and actually correlating that data into some sectors. Like, for example, if you live in England and you live in a tall building, you're more likely to be affected by a fire. And you don't think about that, right? And like, these things are low frequency, high risk events and high consequence events.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to hear all the data on it and like how it affects people and all that kind of stuff. Like Lacknell House, for example, in London was a brilliant example of a horrible fire in a high-rise building and presented massive challenges to London Fire Brigade, which they obviously debriefed and learned a lot from. But yeah, so we were talking there, and then I was talking with some other firefighters, and these guys are look. Before the conference, Russ, the organizer, who's also an ex-firefighter and a tall building expert, got all the firefighters on together. It was hilarious, right? I'm sitting there with Michael Wright, Peter McBride, and Brent Brooks on a Zoom call, and they're all introducing themselves to me. I'm like, you guys don't need to introduce yourselves to me. I read your stuff. I know who you guys are. Like, yeah, and like, so they got to present on their varied subjects of expertise, and so like, when I got asked, I was like, what am I going to talk about? Like, how am I going to walk into a room with like Brent Brooks, who's captain of Toronto high-rise unit, and like going to high-rise fires pretty much daily and doing some amazing things with extinguishment and water? How am I talking to him about fires? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
He's done 30 years and he's gone to countless fires in high-rise buildings. How am I talking to him about high-rise fires? So I was like, all right, what can you talk about? Because I work in the CBD and I do go to these fires quite a bit. Quite a bit by Australian standards. It's still not as much as these other people. I still don't have the depth of knowledge they do. So what can I talk about? I can talk about plagiarism, yeah? So I can talk about how I reach out to them and gather all their information and then put it against our operational context to develop high-rise policy, and then the challenges of enacting that high-rise policy and doing that cultural shift into a new way of operation. So my talk was on how to develop high-rise policy for an organisation. Like, I couldn't say what we did, because what I did here in Australia is completely different to the buildings you have over there. Like, single staircases are extremely rare here, and they have so many other fire safety considerations, passive and active systems in them, like to allow them to be a single stair. Like, I can't get the sprinklers. Like, anything over 7 stories here is sprinklered with a wet pipe system.
Really?
We have wet risers. We don't do dry. Like, I just couldn't get over the building system there. So it's pointless me going there and saying, hey, this is what we wrote, because it's all based on Australian building codes and Australian building standards. So I went with, here's the journey we went on when we wrote stuff. And why am I speaking about it as an LF? Well, I'm the lowest rank that can act up into the officer's seat. So I might be the first arriving on this. And what's written in this doctrine directly affects me, because I'm the one walking through the door. So, like, for all of the firefighters out there that are like, oh, we're reading doctrine again, dude, it's what you're meant to be doing. It's what's going to keep you safe.
Yeah.
It's what's been written from lessons like Fleur. It's what's been written from research. You need to know it. I know it's boring. I know it's like, oh, why do we need to do it? But you need to have the discipline to read it, and then the discipline to follow it, so that we can have safe and effective operations on the fireground. So that's what I talked about there. And like, Phil Bailey was there. He was a panelist on one of the roundtables. Phil works for Kent Fire Rescue, and he's an amazing man, and he's done so much doctrine stuff in his time, and he gave me big props for it, which was brilliant. But I was shitting myself, mate. Like, as I said, I talk to firefighters. I don't talk to academics. So I'm standing up in front of all these academics, and like, I asked Michael.
Talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to me about that imposter syndrome and that aspect of how you get over that, because firefighters will experience this all over the place, and especially referencing back to the recruits aspect. You know, we get them to present and deliver on station, and that is their own sense of, oh, who the fuck am I? I'm nervous, I'm scared, you know. And then people going up to LFs and presenting to organizations, or even just their own organization. How did you get over that imposter syndrome? I mean, you've been in 15, 16 years, but you're still early on in your career, hopefully not even halfway. How did you deal with that personally? Just go there for a minute for me.
Yeah, so like, I've only been in 10. Oh, sorry, I just correct you, because I don't want to be one of these guys getting around saying I've been in longer than I have. I've only been 10. But I was so nervous when I started, mate. Like, I was shaking. Like, ask Michael. And the other thing they told me was that you had to stand behind the pulpit. Now, I'm not a great public speaker, and when I talk, I kind of have to move around a lot, and I move my hands a lot, and I've got to be active, because that helps me get all my thoughts out. So I abandoned the lectern pretty early and started walking around, and I had to speak into a microphone. I've never done that before, so that was really weird. You could probably hear me heavy breathing a lot through it at the start. But as I started, and like, I'm there staring at like Michael and John Sharp, Brent Brooks and Pete McBride, and Michael Reich, and they're all like sitting there looking at me, like nodding, giving me thumbs up, like, you're doing well, mate. So it was their support
Bless
that really
him.
helped me, like, just kind of ease into it. And then I went 5 minutes over, Russ wanted to kill me.
Mate, I'm so fucking terrible at that. Brevity.
I think I had, I think when time was up, I had 10 slides left, so I just, like, as quickly as I could, got through them all. But it was an experience, and it taught me a hell of a lot about presenting in front of people, and again, time management and all that kind of stuff, preparation. I learned so much, and so from there, I've come back and my presenting skills gone through the roof because I've put myself in that discomfort zone, and like, growth doesn't come from comfort.
Mate, you're so right though, and like I applaud you for getting over yourself in order to do that because I haven't met. I mean, the podcast is only anything at all because of the incredible people like yourself that we have to come and speak on it. Because I've said ad nauseum, and I'll say it again now. I know fucking it about shit about nothing, and the knowledge that I have managed to accumulate has come from the incredible people I'm privileged to have conversations with. But it requires them to be able to get over themselves, to be able to share it with a wider audience. And I speak to so many people where I'm like, God, you're fascinating. God, you're really interesting. You know, you should do something. You should speak somewhere, or come on as a guest if you want to. And I'm like, how selfish it is of us subconsciously to not get over ourselves to share that information. Because I'm sure you were probably stood there and you could probably list at least 10 or 12 people in your own brigade, service, whatever it may be, who would have done a better job doing that. And I have it all the time where I'm like, oh, you should be speaking to my other colleague, or you should be speaking to so-and-so, or so-and-so should be having this conversation, because that's where we don't do ourselves justice, because so much of that knowledge will leave the service with that individual because they accumulated it all, but they never shared it. They never wrote it down. They never spoke to anybody about it. And that's the key. And that's what like keeps me awake at night, is thinking about how many people I haven't spoken to, how many people we haven't been able to capture that knowledge from. And that's what really inspires people. So, mate, fair play to yourself for getting over yourself enough to do it. And again, it's kind of like a chicken and egg scenario, because only by getting over yourself and putting yourself out there do you then get the approach and support from people like Pete, Brent, John, Mike, people that will approach you and go, mate, that was great. And you still think, oh God, no, I completely fucked it up. And they're like, no, come and join us on this, come and be part of that, come and get this input. And then ironically, you do end up becoming a person with that, Rolodex of knowledge, like you alluded to earlier, because you were able to get over yourself and put yourself out there and be willing to fail and be willing to look stupid and be willing to be contradicted. Because actually what ends up coming out the other end of it is people that recognize, I was in that position once. I felt stupid. I felt scared. And they're the people like John, Brent, Pete, whoever, who have then become those knowledge bases, because they then get invited to other places, and it becomes that self-perpetuating cycle.
Yeah, like I've written some stuff internally for the brigade, and I've had John look at it, and I've had the Johns, let's call them the Johns, so Chubb and McDonald, look at it, and they both said to me, like, the first line is, it takes a lot to write down some stuff because you're putting it out there, you're putting your bare brain out there. What comes next comes with love. It's the next thing that they say, and then they rip me to shreds. And I always reply to them, don't apologize.
Yeah,
I need like for me to grow, for me to be the best I can be, to help people be the best they can be. I need people like you criticizing me as hard as you can, and checking me on my stuff and making sure that I know my onions and what I'm saying is right. Because if it's not, it could damage people because I'm writing it for someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like you need that, and when you do want to start doing this stuff, if anyone out there wants to start delving into all this stuff, you've got to be able to take that hard criticism, because that's what's going to develop you, and you've got to put yourself outside that comfort zone so that you grow. If you just sit inside the comfort zone, look, you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable at all times. Because if you just sit there and go, oh, no, I don't want to learn, I don't want to grow, you're never going to get outside the comfort zone. You're never going to go anywhere worth going. You're never going to be anything worth being.
Firefighters podcast is put together to develop, inspire, and hopefully even motivate those individuals who have chosen to serve our communities and be part of the first responder family. It's brought to you by myself, operational firefighter Pete Wakefield. If you have enjoyed today's episode and you want to see the podcast continuing, please head over to our Patreon page where you can support the ongoing efforts of the podcast. Please hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on whatever platform you're listening to. Please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.